ahead of the upcoming Rio Summit. We're in conversation now here at Gibbs with the Science and Technology Minister, Naledi Pandor. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us. Ahead of this Rio Summit, maybe you could put things into some sort of perspective for us. Why should business leaders be worried? Why should they care?
Well, essentially, everybody should be concerned about sustainability, but of course responding to the challenge of addressing the problems that confront our environment, which are in the domain of food security, energy, water availability. Clearly, business has a very important role in all of these areas because you're talking new technology, you're talking investment and research, and it's industry that plays a role in all of these domains. Also, changing our economic practices to more sustainable practices means that the industrial sector has to be transformed. It means we look far more carefully at energy saving. We look far more carefully at how we use water for a range of industrial processes. So I think the private sector, as well as our small and medium-sized businesses, have to take on both the opportunities and the challenges posed by sustainability.
And given all the pressures that they currently face economically, are they taking this issue seriously enough?
I think there's some that are. There are companies in the mining sector, for example, that have looked at water recovery technologies in order to improve the quality of water and either reuse it for industrial purposes or for domestic purposes. There are companies that have begun to develop technologies for sensors, for example, for energy saving, where companies have retooled all their factories in order to be far more energy responsible. And I think we are thrilled when companies respond in a positive way, especially your big corporates.
Do you think developing economy organizations bring perhaps more realism to this debate than some of the more established economies, given the unique challenges that they face?
Well, I think they can lead the edge. The developing world can, because you don't have to repeat the mistakes of the past. You actually can leapfrog into very positive practices, depending on your awareness. And this is where young scientists, such as those gathered in this Global Academy meeting, are so important, because they can alert the world to both what is possible as well as what is necessary.
A number of the delegates that I've spoken to from this conference bemoan the fact that not enough is being done in this country to promote those young scientists that you're talking about, from an education point of view, from a funding point of view. And they're right, aren't they?
Well, I think something is being done. As to enough, clearly much more needs to be done. I'm always more, well disposed toward talking of the positive and what needs to be done. I think we are investing in education. The bulk of our budget goes toward education. I believe we need to increase support for postgraduate students. We need to have more young people succeeding in maths, in physical science, in life sciences. These are aspects that we must pay attention to. Some of the strategies we've adopted of specialist schools, improved development of teachers, are strategies directed at addressing these very, very big problems.
Big problems, but they all seem to be long-term solutions that
education is always generational. It never changes just in a few decades.
But don't we lose the edge as we try to implement those long-term?
Well, firstly, what you must do is ensure where you have excellence, you build on it. You never neglect to do that. So we have around 7 high-performing research universities in our country. Must invest in them. You have a number of schools that are doing very well in the sciences, in mathematics. You invest in them. Never neglect your quality. That, I think, is an important lesson that South Africa must learn, while indeed you do address your developmental challenges.
And that interface between government that needs to provide the funding and the enabling environment, but also the private sector. people that you and I are addressing in this particular interview, are they doing enough? What do they need to do? Do they need to give much more money to this process that you're talking about?
Well, I think I've been fairly excited at some of the private sector's investments in education, the support they've provided, certainly in the time I was in the sector, through their corporate social responsibility programs. But what I was particularly thrilled about was the recognition that it's not always about resources. You know, sometimes it's about me as a senior manager imparting my management skills to a school principal who's just finding it difficult to run a school. And it's around process, it's around getting the timetable out in time. It's around distributing material and ensuring your teachers are all teaching the required amount of time, know when they should do that, and are made to be in class when they should. So these are management principles, and we can have our senior business leaders coming into schools to assist us in some of these domains. So it's not just a resource question. Of course, resources are important, but the other support elements are vital.
Let me bring you back in conclusion to this Rio summit, if we can. South Africa obviously has an important role to play. We want to influence the debate, but there is concern that a gathering like this is going to have the same outcome as COP17. A lot of talk with very little movement forward. Is there any difference to this upcoming meeting?
I think if one looks at the history since 1992 summit, this is a more positive debate than the climate change one. There are, of course, very close associations, but I think there's greater concern about sustainability and much more action in several of your leading developed countries in responding to sustainability issues. And of course, it enjoys prominence in your UNESCO platforms, the World Food Organization, and many other institutions that I think will ensure that there's deliberate attention to practical outcomes.
Greater concern, Minister, I agree with you, but far less money.
Far less resourcing. We need to have much more, and I think governments must commit. But what I hope will come out of the Rio Plus 20 is a clear platform of action which we can invest in that allows governments to, in a deliberate fashion, set out a 5 to 10 year set of programs that actually will begin to roll back the negative impacts.
Minister Naledi Pandor, thank you for joining us at GIBS.
Thank you very much.